We are seeing one of the largest distribution of wealth this country has ever seen. And unfortunately, it's affecting the housing market, your housing goals, the stock market, you name it. We're all being affected by it. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Californication, baby. Now, Californians like to get a lot of hate, and I'm not going to bash on Californians in this video, but it's important to know what's happening here, right? Let's truly understand what's causing these values to rise, but more importantly, are they going to sustain? If I keep getting calls from people saying, hey Javier, I'm looking to buy a house and for $250 in Phoenix, which is impossible by the way, and I'm gonna do it in 9 months. And I tell them, well, what's gonna happen in 9 months that it's gonna make houses so cheap? The housing market's gonna crash, Javier. That's when I'll buy a house. Okay. At the same token, I also get people calling me saying, Javier, I just borrowed from my 401k. I just got my grandma. I just stole some money from her from a freaking drawer. I want to buy a house now. I might not be the best agent, but I think I have a pretty good perception of what's going on. So let me describe to you what's going to happen and why some markets are going to fault. Other ones might be okay still. So I want to share a quick story about me, okay? I've been a real estate agent now for 8 years. I got my license when I was 21. Got gray hairs now. I'm getting old. I'm getting chunky. All the above. Or I want to say once I started selling homes at a consistent level, it was 2015, 2017 around there. And even though I wasn't very busy, I was a very average realtor. It honestly, in my opinion, is the golden days. You know, if you were a home buyer, you didn't need much to qualify because houses were relatively cheap, at least here. Interest rates were higher, 3 to 5% around there, but they had all these amazing down payment assistance programs that were there. Now, if in hindsight, I think it would have been a better market if there was no DPA programs, but whatever, they were there. So if you were out looking for a house, you might encounter a house with multiple offers, which meant literally 2 or 3 back in the day. Most of the time you have, pick your poison, right? This house has one offer, this house is available, this house has a few offers. You know what? We can try to make an offer. If you want closing costs, let's maybe ask for list price or just a little bit above. Or maybe if it needs a little work, let's try to get it cheaper and have you pay your own closing costs. I was really thinking, why did that feel like the right time? Was it because I was nice and young and perky? Or is it just nostalgia? Well, so then the next thing I looked up naturally was the median income. The median income is the income amount that divides a population into 2 equal groups, half having an income above that amount and half having an income below that amount. Now, this median income, right? I'm assuming, if we use logic here, right above it, that good middle section is what we would call the middle class family. And it is, in my opinion, the housing market is in solid shape when most of the homes being bought are accessible to the middle class families. So I would even dare to say, since we were in a recovering market from 2013-ish to 2017-ish, housing was not only affordable for middle class families, but it were actually affordable for lower middle class families. So I remember, someone who maybe only made $3,000 a month was able to buy a nice $150,000, $160,000 house. And for sellers, not only did their housing values increase 3 to 5% a month, which is the healthy increase on a healthy market, but if they decided to put brand new cabinets, brand new pool in the back, their value would grow and even more, right? What I immediately noticed, and maybe you felt this too in 2018, is there is a huge shift. That's right. I said 2018, not 2020. I looked up 4 states and I started seeing a very noticeable trend here of an uptick median income. Was maybe not too concerning. I think most people interpreted it as, people are just trying to get paid more. People are getting a lot more promotions, but this trend continued in 2019. And we don't have the number for 2020 and 2021, but golly gee, I can bet your sweet butt that it's probably gone up as well in these states. So what happened in 2018? Well, let me tell you about a state. This is the median income of California, right? And this is the average housing price right now. So for someone who's living in California, if you're middle class, lower middle class, upper middle class, you're not eligible to buy a house. The threshold of home ownership is only available to the upper class folks, or unless you're in a different city that's not very popular. So I believe, end of 2010s, that middle class was just getting anxious. We're getting tired of it. Maybe they're growing up. Millennials, at that point, we're in our mid-20s, I believe. So maybe it's time to grow up and get a family and start, really thinking and growing up, right? So I don't think it's a coincidence that as millennials hit their 20s, there's this big inflow of people moving out. Now, as a real estate agent, I started seeing a trickle of it. A lot of the realtors I know will tell you it's 2018, 2019. More of these California buyers or out-of-state buyers from Chicago or anywhere else were coming into the state. Many times when people leave their state, people think, well, they can just move here and they have to find a new job. You can keep performing the same job and you get permission from your company. You can keep that same wage and job in another state. We started seeing a trickle of people coming in who had higher, nicer paying jobs. Even though the median income is still kind of low compared to the values, it's still higher than most, right? Because the cost of living is higher in California. So, $90,000 in California might have not seemed a lot to them, but if they come to Arizona, $90,000 a year is going to live you a really good life, especially in 2018. It's not a coincidence that for the states I'm looking at, there's a started uptick of median value. Now, 2019, it boosted even more. We started seeing the increase of percentages in the double digits. I don't blame these Californians for doing that. What would you do if that was in a situation? A lot of these people, it's not their fault they were born there. It's not their fault their parents moved there, right? As they grew older, they're in their 20s now, having babies, having families, they need to settle down. And California did not open those doors for them to settle down. They had to go somewhere. So they're going to the local states nearby that have potential and growth. There's a lot of people moving here, and but it was not enough of a threat where people who still lived in Arizona were still able to buy. And that's when the explosion hit. Coronavirus! 2020 happens. It was a shock to us all. Even I know we're at the tail end of it, but really, I think our generation or every generation is going to remember these times really difficult. Unfortunately, some of us are coming out of this with our families looking a little differently. Some of us are coming out politically different, but we can all agree that it affected us. 2020, literally just a huge inflow of people. You probably, if you thought about leaving, 2020 was the deciding factor to you. California restricted a lot of things. And more importantly, people, as they were stuck in their house, I'm sure got the idea, why am I living in the state? There's a huge homeless problem here. We're living in the small apartment or the small house that we're renting for $2,000 a month. I want to own a freaking house. I'm getting the F out of here. So 2020, in my opinion, was the great explosion or the Californication of a lot of these states. This is where we don't have 2020's number yet, but I'm almost going to be positive there's probably going to be 10 to maybe 20% increase in median income in all these states. Overnight, all of my buyer base was Californians. Like literally, there was like 3 or 4 months in 2020 where it was just all California folks. And the folks that lived here for a long time that, barely qualified for the right amount were getting bid out and beat out. And people keep talking about these crazy cash offers and all that. They actually weren't that crazy. It's like only the last 2 or 3 months that things really hit the fan about that. But it was still normal, but there was just a lot of freaking buyers coming here. Because there's this huge amount of demand just poured into the market, housing values started increasing, right? Because sellers could frankly get away with it, especially with people waiving their appraisal, buying the houses cash. They threw caution to the wind and the value started increasing. Some might say even artificially increasing. There's a lot of people moving in the States, a lot of people moving. And guess what? They're keeping their jobs. A lot of companies are switching to work at home models because of COVID, and they're getting paid the same amount, if not a little more, since they can cut their overhead since they don't have to have an office. That average income that they have from California comes to Arizona or Utah or Nevada, and it's above average income, right? And now because of that, they have the ability to throw their weight around a little more. And it comes to the natural conclusion of folks that say, well, there has to be a housing market crash here, and these values are just not supported. I just got off the phone with somebody who told me we're going to make an offer last June 2020, but I just felt the values were too high. And I told him, dude, if you thought that those values are high, you're wait till you see what's happening now. There's no chance.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they...
So of course this leads to my conclusion, right? You see that median income increasing in double digits, and most people might assume, well, geez, that must mean a lot of people are getting raises right now. This must mean the population is starting to work more and get more money, and America. If you have a discussion with anybody who's in the middle class, which is most of us, we're not really getting paid that much more. Maybe a little bonus here or something, but the income's staying about the same. I'd understand if the minimum wage went up or something, but they're still relatively about the same, or if not, there is a small percentage increase of it. So why are the median incomes increasing in these states? I'm silent on purpose because I want you to think, and it probably clicked in your head already. It's the new flow of people here with higher paying jobs. There's 10 families that live in a state that all make about $60,000 a year, and then there's 10 more families that move into that neighborhood, and they're all making about $90,000 a year. What is that going to do to the median income? People aren't making more money. People who make more money are coming to the state. And housing values are going up at a higher rate, and guess what this means? I remember I said earlier, lower income class families, middle class income families were available to purchase in these states at maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But as the income is growing and the values are growing, the threshold's getting higher. I think, in my opinion, what's happened is we completely eliminated the chance for lower middle class families to even purchase a house. They're no longer in the picture unless they buy with someone else who's lower middle class who can double their income together, or simply just wait until they make more money. It's a very, very small chance they can buy a home, at least in the city. Obviously, maybe they can go in the outskirts and get something. I would even dare to say, in some states, the middle class is getting to the point where it's going to be very difficult for them to buy a house. So what it's doing is it's getting middle class buyers out of the picture. In California, you could not buy a house if you were in the middle class, lower middle class. I would even say upper middle class. Well, this effect now is affecting other states because the income's growing, making it so only the people who are upper middle class or upper class who are able to save more money and throw money at the seller are able to buy, and leaving middle class and lower middle class out of the picture. So let's face it, a lot of us are lower middle class to middle class. It makes up a huge percentage of not only the population, but even my audience. So the reason why you guys are feeling this frustration is because we're in this situation. People thinking and hoping there's a housing market crash in, let's say Phoenix, Arizona. You got another thing coming, because the values are increasing at a rapid rate, and eventually I believe they will slow down so it's not exploding. But if there are folks who have higher incomes living in the state now, right? They moved here, they're staying here now, they're not moving. Why are the values going to start going down? They can afford to those values. And you're going to say, well, I'm middle class, lower class. I can't really get a house. They couldn't get a house in California either for almost a decade, unless you got creative. So what I like for you to do is do some research in your own city. What is the median income? Is it exploding? Is there a lot of people moving into your state? What's going on? Like, if you are a situation like Austin, like Dallas, Fort Worth, like Phoenix, like Reno, Nevada, even that's a huge place. I had no idea it was exploding too. If you're in states like these that are exploding in value, odds are, in my opinion, those values will probably be sustained for the most part once things slow down. What I am worried about is these cities around the city, like the ones where there's not a lot of people moving there, but for some reason their values are still going up. So my question is, what's going to sustain these values for the cities who are not having a huge flow of people moving in, but yet are increasing in value? But now a city that has a huge flow of people moving in has a huge foundation that's going to be supporting, unfortunately, the higher values. So stop waiting around for a market crash to happen. Right? If you really truly want to be a homeowner right now, unfortunately, the stakes have gone higher. You need to start being creative about what to do, because I don't think this Californication effect is gonna just go away next year. The way housing is done in the United States has changed from this point on. We've been in a very fortunate period the last 10 years of just being, nice and cheap housing. We're not longer there. Get more prepared. Don't go into massive debt. Start using your finances wisely, and you can try to still buy a home in these big states. What I'm hoping is things start slowing down, so that way at least those who want to buy don't have to sell an arm and a leg. But if you think your values are going to be dropping in your city and state, and there's a lot of people moving there, I would recommend you start thinking of alternative options.